The War Council chamber aboard the Velkari flagship Dominion's Fist hummed with anticipation. Admiral Kessix tapped his claws against the obsidian table, his three eyes gleaming with what his species called the hunger before the feast. Around him sat representatives from 12 allied species, each one eager to witness what they believed would be the galaxy's easiest conquest. "Humans," Kessix said, letting the word drip with contempt. "A species that has existed in space for barely 2 centuries. They have 17 colony worlds, a defense fleet numbering 300 ships, and absolutely no experience with real warfare." He paused, mandibles clicking in what passed for laughter among his kind. "The Council has granted us the honor of their subjugation. This will be over in 6 months." Commander Threxel, a hulking Goroth whose species had crushed 40 civilizations, leaned forward. "My intelligence officers report something unusual, Admiral. The humans have recalled all their exploration vessels, every single one. They have also gone completely silent on all diplomatic channels." "Fear," Kessix replied with a dismissive wave. "They know we are coming. They are paralyzed by terror, as they should be." What Kessix did not know, what none of them knew, was that humanity had spent those 2 centuries studying, watching, learning from every conflict they had observed through their deep space telescopes and quantum listening posts. They had seen the Velkari destroy the peaceful Renix Federation. They had watched the Goroth glass entire planets for sport. They had documented every atrocity, every tactical mistake, every weakness, and they had prepared. The invasion fleet arrived at the human colony of New Melbourne 3 weeks later. 2,000 warships, carrying enough firepower to crack a planet's crust. Kessix stood on his command deck, watching the blue-green world rotate peacefully below. "No defensive perimeter," his tactical officer reported. "No orbital platforms, no warning buoys. Admiral, they have left the planet completely undefended." Something cold crawled up Kessix's spine. In 40 years of conquest, he had never encountered an enemy that simply gave up. "Scan for life signs." 7 million humans on the surface, Admiral, all in their primary city." "They are waiting to surrender," Kessix said, though his voice lacked conviction. "Launch the landing force. Threxel, take your Goroth warriors and secure the capital. I want their leadership in chains before nightfall." The troop transports descended through thin clouds, their hulls gleaming in the afternoon sun. Threxel led 5,000 warriors, the finest shock troops in the galaxy. As they approached the city, he noticed something strange. The streets were empty, completely empty. Buildings stood intact, vehicles parked neatly along curbs, but no humans anywhere. "Spread out," Threxel commanded. "Search every structure. They cannot hide forever." His warriors fanned through the city, their heavy boots echoing off abandoned storefronts and silent apartment complexes. Then, from somewhere deep underground, came a sound. A single tone, pure and clear, rising into the air like a question. Threxel frowned. "What is that?" The tone ended. Silence returned, heavier than before. Then every building in the city exploded simultaneously. Not with fire or shrapnel. That would have been merciful. The humans had laced every structure with something their military called molecular disassemblers, nanomachines that could reduce organic matter to its component atoms in seconds. Threxel had time to realize what was happening, time to feel his flesh beginning to dissolve, before his consciousness scattered into the wind. On the Dominion's Fist, Kessix watched in horror as his entire ground force simply vanished. The life sign readings dropped from 5,000 to 0 in the span of a heartbeat. What was that?" his tactical officer whispered. Before Kessix could respond, every screen on the bridge switched to show a single human face. A woman, perhaps 50 years old, with gray streaks in her dark hair and eyes like frozen stone. She wore no uniform, no insignia of rank. She did not need them. "Hello?" she said. Her voice was pleasant, almost friendly. "My name is General Amara Okafor. I am the Supreme Commander of Human Defense Forces. You have invaded our territory, killed none of our people, yet, because we evacuated New Melbourne 2 weeks ago, but you did murder 5,000 of your own. That is unfortunate. For you." Kessix found his voice. "We are the Velkari Hegemony. We command 700 systems. You are insects, and we will crush." "Please," Okafor interrupted, holding up one hand. "I have heard this speech before. 17 times, actually. Once from each of the species you have conquered. Here is my counteroffer. You have 12 hours to return to your home systems. Any ship that remains in human space after that deadline will be destroyed. Not captured, not disabled. Destroyed." Threxel's replacement, a younger Goroth named Krell, snarled at his own screen. "You think you frighten us, human? We have fought species that could boil oceans with their minds. We have crushed empires that spanned thousands of worlds. What can you possibly—" He stopped because his flagship, the mighty Eternal Conquest, suddenly lost power. Every system, from weapons to life support, simply shut down. On screens across the fleet, humans appeared. Not Okafor this time, but technicians, engineers, ordinary-looking people sitting at ordinary-looking consoles. One of them, a young man who looked barely old enough to serve, smiled and waved. "Hi, we are remote accessing your computer systems. Turns out you guys use pretty basic encryption. Anyway, we will turn your power back on in a minute. Just wanted to show you that we can do this whenever we want. Bye." The systems came back online. Krell sat in his command chair, breathing heavily. Around him, his crew looked at each other with something none of them had felt in decades: fear. On the Dominion's fist, Kessix was having similar thoughts. His tactical officer pulled up a display. "Admiral, I am detecting movement. Human ships emerging from... They are emerging from the outer asteroid belt. How long have they been hiding there?" "Count them," Kessix ordered. The officer's voice went quiet. 3,000 ships, Admiral. They have 3,000 ships. Intelligence said they only had 300. Intelligence, Kessix said bitterly, was clearly wrong. On Earth, in a bunker buried 3 miles beneath the Rocky Mountains, General Okafor stood before a holographic display showing the entire theater of operations. Around her, 200 officers monitored every aspect of the battle that was about to begin. Except it would not be a battle. Not really. Her second-in-command, Colonel James Winters, approached with a tablet. "General, the fleet is in position. All ships report ready. The enemy is showing signs of confusion and fear." "Good," Okafor said. "Fear is useful. It makes people irrational. How long until their deadline expires?" 11 hours, 42 minutes. Okafor nodded. "Make sure our ships maintain position. No aggressive moves, no weapons charging. I want them to think we are bluffing." "Are we bluffing, General?" She looked at him, and Winters saw something in her eyes that made him glad he was on her side. "What do you think, Colonel?" Winters swallowed. "No, ma'am, we are not bluffing." "Correct. Now, let's see if they are smart enough to leave." Back on the Dominion's fist, Kessix had called an emergency council. The 12 species representatives argued loudly, their translator units struggling to keep up. "We should attack now!" roared a Haxan warlord. "Show them we do not fear their tricks." "Their tricks killed 5,000 Goroth in seconds," countered a Silith diplomat. "Perhaps we should consider—" "Consider what?" Kessix interrupted. "Retreating? Showing weakness? If we back down now, every species in the galaxy will think the hegemony can be intimidated. We attack. We destroy their fleet, glass their worlds, and make an example that will be remembered for centuries." A Velkari junior officer, barely more than a hatchling, raised one claw tentatively. "Admiral, permission to speak?" "Granted. What if this is what they want? What if they are baiting us into attacking?" Kessix laughed, a harsh, rattling sound. "Then they are fools. We outnumber them. Our ships are larger, our weapons more powerful. Even if they have some technological advantages, they cannot overcome raw force." The junior officer opened his mouth to argue, then closed it. There was no point. The decision was made. "All ships," Kessix announced over the fleet-wide channel. "Battle formation. We advance on the human fleet in 1 hour. Today, we teach these primitives the price of defiance." On Earth, alarms chimed softly. An analyst called out, "General, the enemy fleet is moving into attack formation. They are not leaving." Okafor had expected this. Hope, as her old mentor used to say, was not a strategy. She tapped a control, and her face appeared on screens throughout the human fleet. "This is General Okafor to all ships and personnel. The enemy has chosen war. Very well. We did not start this fight, but by God and all the stars, we will finish it. Remember your training. Trust your equipment. And know that every human throughout our worlds is counting on you. Show them what humanity can do when we are united. Show them why you do not wake the sleeping tiger. All ships execute Protocol Nightfall. May fortune favor the bold." Across 3,000 human vessels, captains and crew members exchanged glances. Some smiled grimly. Others looked sick. All of them knew what Protocol Nightfall meant. Total war. No mercy. No quarter. The fleets began to close. Kessix watched the range counter tick down. 5 million kilometers. 4 million. 3 million. At 2 million kilometers, his weapons would achieve optimal firing solutions. "All batteries, prepare to fire on my mark," he ordered. 2.5 million kilometers. 2.2 million. At exactly 2 million kilometers, the human fleet simply disappeared. Every single ship vanished from sensors. Kessix stared at his tactical display in confusion. "Where did they go? Find them. They cannot just—" His tactical officer's voice cracked. "Admiral, I have them. They just jumped. Micro-jumps, hundreds of them, simultaneous. They are behind us. They are in front of us. They are— Admiral, they are everywhere." Kessix spun to look at the visual feeds. His 3,000 ships were now scattered among the enemy fleet. Human vessels had positioned themselves perfectly, each one targeting specific weak points on hegemony ships. It was impossible. Jump drives could not be that precise. They could not coordinate that many vessels simultaneously. It defied everything known about faster-than-light travel. But humans had spent 2 centuries studying. They had solved problems that other species considered impossible, simply because they were too stubborn to accept impossible as an answer. "All ships, emergency jump!" Kessix screamed. "Get us out of here!" Too late. 3,000 human ships fired simultaneously. Not with lasers or missiles or plasma cannons. Those were old technologies, easily defended against. Humans had developed something new, something terrible. kinetic penetrators moving at 98% of light speed, needle-thin projectiles that punched through shields like they were not even there, through armor designed to withstand nuclear blasts, through bulkheads and decks and crew quarters. Each projectile carried enough kinetic energy to vaporize anything in its path. The Eternal Conquest took 17 hits in 3 seconds. Krell had time to open his mouth to scream before the ETD 18th penetrator passed through his command chair, through his body, through the deck beneath him, and out the other side of the ship. The mighty Goroth flagship broke in half, spilling atmosphere and bodies into the void. Across the battlefield, Hegemony ships died. Not dramatically, not with massive explosions. They simply stopped working, their crews killed instantly by projectiles moving too fast to see. In the bunker on Earth, analysts called out reports in calm, professional voices. Enemy flagship destroyed. Enemy carrier group 7 eliminated. Enemy battleship squadron 3 disabled. Okafor watched the tactical display with no expression. This was what she had trained for. What humanity had prepared for. 2 centuries of peace had been spent building the most terrifying military machine the galaxy had ever seen, all hidden behind a facade of naive exploration and scientific curiosity. On the Dominion's fist, Kessix finally managed to order an emergency jump. His ship, protected by heavier shields and better positioned than most, had survived the initial salvo. As his vessel tore open a hole in space-time and fled, he looked back at the battle. Of his 3,000 ships, fewer than 400 remained. The rest were debris, floating monuments to arrogance. The human fleet did not pursue. They simply reformed into perfect formation and waited, watching, ready for the next move. Kessix collapsed into his command chair. Around him, his bridge crew worked in shocked silence. They had just witnessed the impossible. They had just been beaten, utterly and completely, by a species they had considered primitive. His communications officer spoke quietly. "Admiral, we are receiving a transmission. It is from the human general." "Put it on screen." Okafor's face appeared, her expression unchanged. "Admiral Kessix, you have 9 hours remaining. I suggest you use them wisely. The next time we fire, we will not miss a single ship. And Admiral, tell your Hegemony Council something for me. Humanity is no longer asking for peace. We are demanding it. Any species that enters our space with hostile intent will face the same fate you just witnessed. We have been patient. We have been diplomatic. Those days are over. You wanted to see what humans are capable of when threatened? You have your answer. Do not make us provide a demonstration twice." The transmission ended. Kessix sat in silence for a long moment. Then he began issuing orders. Orders to retreat. Orders to regroup at the Hegemony border. Orders that tasted like ash in his mouth, but were necessary for survival. The great Velkari Hegemony, conqueror of hundreds of worlds, was running away. And the humans, the species they had dismissed as primitives, watched them go with cold, calculating eyes. This was not how the war was supposed to begin. But then again, as General Amara Okafor knew very well, wars rarely go according to plan, especially when one side has been preparing in secret for 200 years and the other has grown fat on easy victories. The galaxy was about to learn a very hard lesson. You do not threaten humanity's children, you do not invade humanity's worlds, and you absolutely, positively do not assume that silence means weakness. Sometimes silence just means that someone is carefully choosing exactly how to destroy you. And humanity had made their choice. 6 months after the Battle of New Melbourne, The Velkari Hegemony Council convened in their grand assembly hall on the capital world of Threxis Prime. Kessix stood before them, his once proud posture now hunched with shame. Around the circular chamber, representatives from the 12-member species watched him with expressions ranging from fury to contempt. High Chancellor Vexrin, eldest of the Velkari, spoke first. His voice echoed through the hall like grinding stone. "Admiral Kessix, you assured us this conquest would take 6 months. You were correct. 6 months have passed. Except instead of conquering the humans, we have lost 18 more colony worlds, 237 ships, and our reputation as an invincible force. Explain." Kessix lifted his head, meeting the Chancellor's gaze. "They fight unlike anyone we have ever encountered. They do not meet us in open battle. They do not defend positions. They simply erase anything we send against them. Our ground forces vanish. Our ships disappear without sending distress signals. It is as if they are ghosts, everywhere and nowhere." "Ghosts do not destroy battle stations," growled Warlord Krax of the Goroth. "Ghosts do not hack our most secure networks and broadcast our military codes to every pirate fleet in 3 sectors. These humans are making us look like fools." "Because we are fools," said a quiet voice from the shadows. Every head turned. From a side entrance stepped Ambassador Lyran of the Silith Concordat, the only species in the hegemony known for their diplomatic rather than military contributions. His scaled features showed no fear, despite speaking treason. "What did you say?" Vexrin demanded. "I said we are fools, Chancellor. We attacked a species we knew nothing about. We assumed technological inferiority based on their age as a space-faring civilization. We never asked the important question. Why did a species develop faster than light travel in just 70 years when it took the rest of us centuries? Why did they build 3 times as many ships as they publicly acknowledged? Why did they smile and nod during every diplomatic meeting while secretly cataloging our weaknesses?" Lyran stepped into the center of the chamber, his voice gaining strength. "I have spent the last 4 months studying every interaction between humans and other species. Do you know what I found? They never lied. Not once. They simply never told us the whole truth. When we asked about their military capabilities, they showed us their oldest ships and said, 'This is what we have.' Technically accurate. When we asked about their weapons technology, they demonstrated their standard kinetic cannons and said, 'This is what we use.' Also accurate. They played us like instruments, and we were too arrogant to hear the music." Kessix felt something shift in the room. The anger was turning inward now, becoming reflection. "So, what do we do?" asked Commander Threll, who had replaced the deceased Threxal. "Do we surrender? Do we, who have conquered 700 systems, bow to a species that holds 17 worlds?" 17 acknowledged worlds, Lyran corrected. "My intelligence sources suggest the real number is closer to 200. Hidden colonies in dead systems, disguised mining operations that are actually military bases, entire fleets tucked away in nebulae that our sensors cannot penetrate. They have been building an empire in the shadows while we laughed at their naivety." Silence fell over the chamber. Finally, Chancellor Vexrin spoke. "What are you proposing, Ambassador?" "I am proposing we do something revolutionary. We talk to them, not as conquerors to victims, but as equals. We negotiate a peace before they decide negotiation is no longer necessary." "Never!" Krax slammed his massive fist on his seat. "The Goroth do not negotiate with prey." "Then the Goroth will die with prey," Lyran said flatly, "because that is what we have become." We are being hunted, Warlord. Every move we make is anticipated. Every strategy countered before we implement it. Tell me, how many ships have you sent to attack human targets in the last month? Krax's expression darkened. 47. And how many returned? Silence. None, Krax finally admitted. None returned. No wreckage, no survivor pods, no final transmissions. They simply ceased to exist. While the Hegemony Council debated, General Okafor sat in her office on Earth, reviewing casualty reports. Her aide, Captain Lisa Nakamura, stood nearby with a concerned expression. General, we have lost a total of 3 people in 6 months of warfare. 3. All accidents during routine operations, nothing combat-related. The politicians are starting to ask questions. Okafor leaned back in her chair. Let me guess. They want to know why we are not pushing harder. Why we have not taken the war to the hegemony homeworlds. Exactly. Senator Torres called it excessively cautious warfare. He suggested we could end this in weeks if we committed to a full offensive. Senator Torres, Okafor said slowly, spent his entire career in corporate law before entering politics. He has never seen combat. He has never watched friends die. He thinks war is a spreadsheet where you calculate costs and benefits. She stood, walking to the window overlooking the mountains. Do you know what our real advantage is, Captain? Superior technology? No, patience. Okafor turned back to face Nakamura. Every species that has achieved spaceflight did so while still engaged in conflicts with their own kind. They carried their territorial aggression, their need for immediate dominance, out into the stars with them. Humans are different. By the time we developed FTL, we had already unified our world. We had learned painfully that victory at any cost is just another form of defeat. So we are holding back deliberately. We are teaching a lesson. The hegemony believes strength is measured in how much destruction you can cause. We are showing them that real strength is measured in restraint. Every ship they send against us disappears without a trace. No dramatic battles. No propaganda footage of glorious victories. Just silence. And silence, Captain, is terrifying in a way explosions never can be. Nakamura considered this. What happens when they finally figure out we could have destroyed them completely at any time? Then they will have a choice. Admit they were defeated by our mercy, or continue fighting and discover what happens when we stop being merciful. 3 weeks later, the choice arrived in the form of an encrypted message on all hegemony channels. The encryption was sophisticated, military-grade, and yet it was broken in 14 seconds by human AIs that had been designed specifically for this purpose. Ambassador Lyran appeared on screen, alone, sitting in what looked like a private office. His scaled hands were folded on the desk before him, and his eyes held the weight of someone who knew he was committing career suicide. General Okafor, my name is Ambassador Lyran of the Silith Concordat. I am contacting you without the authorization of the Hegemony Council. This conversation could result in my execution for treason. I am doing it anyway, because I believe continuation of this war will result in something worse than my death. It will result in genocide. Okafor, watching from her office, gestured for the recording to continue. I have studied your species extensively over the past months. I know things about humanity that my own government does not know. I know, for instance, that you have weapons you have not deployed yet. Weapons that make your kinetic penetrators look primitive. I know you have infiltrated every major hegemony computer system and could shut down our entire infrastructure with a single command. I know your actual fleet size is 7,000 ships, not 3,000. and I know that you are restraining yourselves deliberately." Lyran paused, gathering himself. "I am asking, begging really, for a chance to negotiate. Not for my sake, but for the billions of civilians across hegemony space who have no say in this war. The Velkari are proud, the Goroth are aggressive, but there are species within the hegemony who oppose this conflict. We are simply powerless to stop it through official channels. Give us an alternative. Give us a way to end this that does not require our complete destruction." The message ended. Okafor sat in silence for several minutes, thinking. Finally, she tapped her communicator. "Colonel Winters, assemble the U senior staff. We have a decision to make." 2 hours later, Okafor stood before her command team in the war room. Holographic displays showed the current military situation. Human ships controlled every approach to hegemony space. Nothing moved in or out without their permission, though the hegemony did not realize they were being blockaded. They just thought their merchant vessels were experiencing unusual navigation failures. "Opinions?" Okafor asked after playing Lyran's message. Colonel Winters spoke first. "It could be a trap. Lure us into negotiations, learn our actual capabilities, adjust their strategy." "Possible, but unlikely," countered Commander Rachel Kim, head of intelligence. "Our analysis of Silith culture suggests deception goes against their fundamental psychology. If Lyran says he is acting alone, he probably is. Even if he is genuine," added Admiral Marcus Cole, "the Hegemony Council might reject any agreement he negotiates. Then we are back to war, except they will have learned things during negotiations." "What would we be negotiating for?" asked General Park, who commanded the Marine Forces. "We are winning. Every objective met, minimal casualties. Why stop now?" Okafor had been waiting for this question. "Because we are not monsters. Yes, we are winning. Yes, we could probably destroy the entire hegemony if we committed to total warfare. But at what cost to ourselves? Not in casualties or resources, in our humanity." She met each officer's eyes in turn. "We built this military to protect our people, not to become the galaxy's new tyrant. If we can achieve our security objectives through negotiation, that is preferable to achieving them through extinction." "The hegemony will see negotiation as weakness," Winters warned. "Let them. We have already demonstrated that their perception of weakness is badly calibrated. I would rather be seen as weak and merciful than strong and merciless." The vote, when called, was not unanimous, but it was decisive. Humanity would negotiate. The meeting took place on a neutral station in unclaimed space. The humans insisted on this location, and the hegemony, desperate for any diplomatic opening, agreed. Lyran arrived with a small delegation, expecting perhaps a dozen human negotiators. General Okafor came alone. She stepped into the conference room wearing her military uniform, no weapons visible, no guards accompanying her. Lyran stood as she entered, his translator unit rendering his hissing speech into smooth English. "General Okafor, thank you for coming. I expected—" "A larger delegation? No need. I have authority to negotiate on behalf of all human governments. Who speaks for the hegemony?" Lyran's scales flushed with embarrassment. "The Council has authorized me to discuss terms, but not to finalize anything. They remain skeptical of your intentions." Okafor sat down, her movements relaxed and casual. "Then let me make my intentions clear. Humanity wants 3 things. First, recognition of our territorial sovereignty. All human-claimed systems are off-limits to hegemony military forces. Second, a non-aggression pact lasting no less than 100 years. Third, full access to hegemony trade networks under fair terms. That is all? Lyran could not hide his surprise. You are not demanding reparations? Territory concessions? Military restrictions? Why would we? You cannot pay reparations that would meaningfully compensate us. We do not want your territory, and we already know your military capabilities are no threat to us. Okafor leaned forward slightly. Ambassador, let me tell you what I really want. I want this war to end before it forces me to do things I will regret. Because if this continues, if your council insists on pursuing conflict, I will have no choice but to remove your ability to make war, permanently. That means destroying your shipyards, your military academies, your weapons manufacturing. It means targeting infrastructure. It means casualties in the millions. She paused, letting that sink in. I do not want to give those orders. I became a soldier to protect people, not to slaughter them. But I will do it if necessary. So help me find another way. Lyran felt something shift in his understanding. This human general was not threatening him. She was asking for his help. It was so unexpected, so completely counter to how the Velkari or Goroth would handle negotiations, that he almost laughed. I believe I can convince the council to accept your terms, he said slowly, but I need something to take back to them. Some demonstration that you are negotiating in good faith. What do you suggest? Your blockade of our trade routes. Our civilian shipping is suffering. If you lifted the blockade, it would show goodwill. Okafor considered this. I will do better. We will provide escorts for your civilian vessels through the disputed regions, free of charge. Any ship that accepts human escort will arrive safely. Any ship that refuses and enters our space will be turned back, but not harmed. How does that sound? Lyran realized his mouth was hanging open. He closed it. You would protect our ships? Why not? They are not our enemies. They are merchants trying to feed their families. War is between governments and militaries, not between ordinary people just trying to live their lives. For the first time in months, Lyran felt something he had almost forgotten. Hope. The negotiations took 3 weeks. The Hegemony Council argued, debated, and twice threatened to execute Lyran for suggesting terms they considered too generous to the humans. But slowly, grudgingly, they came to realize they had no alternative. Intelligence reports confirmed what Lyran had discovered. Humanity had been playing with them from the beginning. The war they thought they were fighting was just a training exercise for the humans. The final agreement was signed on a date that would be remembered across the galaxy. The Hegemony acknowledged human sovereignty, agreed to the Non-Aggression Pact, and opened their trade networks. In exchange, humanity lifted all military restrictions on hegemony movement and returned control of 3 systems they had occupied during the conflict. But the most important clause was added at Okafor's insistence. Any species threatened by external aggression could request human protection. Not military alliance, not vassalage, protection. The difference mattered. Within a year, 17 species had requested such arrangements. Within 5 years, the hegemony itself had quietly signed a mutual defense treaty with humanity after a new extragalactic threat emerged from the void beyond known space. Admiral Kessix, demoted but not discharged, found himself serving as a liaison officer aboard a human vessel during the extragalactic crisis. He watched human and hegemony forces train together, share technology, coordinate strategies. It baffled him. One night, he approached General Okafor, who was visiting the ship, and asked the question that had haunted him for years. Why did you not destroy us when you had the chance? Okafor looked at him with those cold, calculating eyes he remembered from their first encounter. Then, surprisingly, she smiled. It was not a warm smile, but it was genuine. Because, Admiral, we learned something your species has not yet discovered. The goal of war is not to destroy your enemy. The goal is to make them into your friend. Dead enemies stay dead. Reformed enemies become allies. And we humans value allies far more than we value corpses. She walked away, leaving Kessix to contemplate the most revolutionary military strategy he had ever encountered. Mercy as a weapon. Restraint as strength. Peace as victory. Years later, when historians wrote about the human hegemony war, they called it the Quiet War. No massive battles, no dramatic last stands, just a relentless, patient demonstration that humanity had evolved beyond the need to prove itself through violence. They wanted war. Humanity gave them something far more terrifying. They gave them a chance to change. And in the end, that silence wrapped in opportunity proved more devastating to the old order than any amount of extinction could have been. The galaxy learned. You do not threaten humanity because they will destroy you. You do not threaten humanity because they will make you realize you should have been allies all along. And that realization, that fundamental shift in perspective, killed the old hegemony far more completely than any weapon ever could.